Hey, folks, welcome to this week's episode of What's Bruin, brought to you by 6342 Productions. I am your host, Chris Nozick, joined, as I am every episode here on the network, by Dom Tiano. Dom, we just did a show on Sunday. Shout out to everyone who has tuned in, watched, or downloaded the first ever episode of the Dom.Hockey podcast. But, Dom, 2 nights later, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Chris. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Got a lot of stuff going on outside of work and outside of the pod and stuff like that. But hopefully, there's a whole bunch of move stuff and a whole bunch of stuff going on. But couple weeks, hopefully that all dies down right as hockey season's getting ready to kick off. We already got Kevin in the house. I think that's supposed to be Spanish. I just don't think he spelt it right. What's up, Kevin?
I,
And then Joel also in the comments already. So hopefully everybody's having a great night.
yeah, Kevin probably had some sweet and sour sauce stuck on his fingers and they stuck to his keyboard.
Something like that. Or the
Yeah,
piece of rice from his burrito or something like
yeah,
that.
something like that.
Anyways, first episode of the Dom.Hockey podcast was Sunday night. We went through, there it is, there's his autocorrect. Um, we went through all of the non-pro prospects. Before we dive into this week's NHL Bruins conversation, how do you think that first episode went, Dom?
I thought it went well. Got a lot of positive replies. I shall say, and I'm not afraid to admit it because people are entitled to their opinion, and I never begrudge them for um, giving their honest opinion, but 6% of the people said it sucked. And it is what it is. It just makes us want to be better the next time. Um, Also, there's a couple of people that let us know that there's some crackling going on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as we upload it. I haven't seen anything on YouTube or the live show. So if anybody hears anything, can you let us know so we can bookmark it and go back and see what the probable cause is?
Yeah, we want to try a couple different things. For instance, you'll notice I'm back to using this mic tonight. Just let us know for that kind of feedback. We'll try and change things up to find what works the best on our end, what works the best for the audio. Kevin says, if you ain't got haters, you ain't doing it right. And Joel says it was a great first show. We got Ian already in the comments as well, and Leonardo on X, as we will refer to it by its official new name, but it'll still always be Twitter at Heart. So, Dom, we are just about a week or so away from training camps opening up.
Well, yeah,
And
rookie camp opens tomorrow, does it not?
I believe it
Yes.
does. I believe it does.
Yes.
Do you want to
So,
start with the rookie camp? Do you want to start with the pending big club camp coming up?
well, let's start with the rookie camp because it's the one that's starting tomorrow. I suspect, we're going to see, um, what is it, 2 days of practice, and then they'll take off for Buffalo for the Prospects Challenge. I suspect we're going to see Matthew Patra take part in that because he missed a lot of hockey last season. So I think they're trying to get his legs back under him before the main camp starts. Um, and I suspect we're going to see a lot of camp invites because the NCAA players will not be present.
Yeah, they won't be able to participate. They're going to have to sign a lot of folks. I know you and I have talked about it. There's not a lot to put in for stake for this one. It'll be fun, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see who they sign, or invite out to camp. There, obviously, it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure a guy like Dean. Well, no, because Dean Letourneau's going off to college, so he won't be able to
Yeah.
do it. You know, I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the ones off the top of my head who we know might be there. You mentioned Poitras.
Well,
Um,
if you look at the potential Providence roster, uh, to me, this is who's guaranteed to be there. Frederick Brunet, Jackson Edward, Drew Bavero, Ryan Mast, Mason Millman, who signed to an AHL deal. Those defensemen for sure. You'll probably see Ryan Bischel and Nolan Meyer as the two goaltenders who are signed to AHL deals. They will probably be there because Bussy and DiPietro, they're going to be busy fighting for a backup role in Boston. And then up front, you'll see Brett Harrison, Trevor Cooper, John Farinacci, Jackson Nelson, Riley Duran, Adam Machura, Evan Beerling, who they just signed to an AHL deal. I think guys like Mark McLaughlin, Georgi Merkulov, Vinny Lettieri, they're all aged out and won't be there. Same goes for Jeffrey Vale, Riley Tuff. So if you're looking to bring 22 guys to Buffalo, there are going to be quite a few invites at this camp.
Now, do you think a guy like Georgi Merkulov will see some time there to kind of get his legs underneath him as he looks to come into camp after?
No. He should be there at the captain's practices and getting ready for the main camp.
That's where I'd want him to be, but you never know. Kendall wants to know if Fabian Lysell will go. I think if Merkulov isn't going to be there, Lysell is going to be focusing as well on his attempt to make the NHL roster. So he'll be at, like you said, the captain's practices, and he'll be skating with those guys.
My guess is Lysell will not be there this time.
Oh, Kevin says he'll be there. He got an invite. So
right, yeah. Water. They need a water boy. So
yeah, something like that. It'll definitely be very interesting to see their approach to it. I can't put a lot of stock into it when they're going to have this many invites. Like you said, they only have 2 goaltenders who they can send. If I'm not mistaken, last year they brought 4.
No, they had 3, but Dick was injured, so he couldn't play.
That's what it was. What it was. It was 3, plus I was thinking of Reed Dick as well. It'll be interesting, especially because some of these guys are, there'll probably be 1 or 2 invites that they have extended that they'll look at, possibly invite, possibly get an AHL deal in place or send them to, Maine or something like that to get an extended look at them. It's not all for naught. It just, for a guy like Trevor Kuntar, for instance, great opportunity to get his legs underneath him for the Providence season. Probably will come into the main camp after that for a little bit and then be sent down once the send downs start to happen. So Kevin says he's going to be there to eat all their snacks. Ian, I believe that chime noise that you were referring to was one of our phones going off.
I just muted mine because I was getting messages, so I just put it on silent.
Yep, mine's been going off for a while as well, all afternoon it seems. So making sure mine is set to the same. So sorry about that. That's what happens on a live show is you forget to put your phone on silent, then it dings and ruins the conversation. But anyway, anywhere else that you want to go with the topic of the rookie camp?
Yeah, just quickly, 2 guys to watch who are on AHL deals is Adam Machura, who was on an AHL deal last year, and Evan Beerling, who they just signed, had a very good OHL career, and then in the ECHL. So we'll see what happens with those, but they're 2 guys I'm interested in watching that don't have contracts.
Kevin says let's see. Whoop. Thanks, appreciate that, Ian. Kevin says that he's about to join the 6% if he hears the phone. Well, Kevin, hopefully you bring it back up to 6% because it's down to 5.1. So, David has a good question though regarding Fabian Lysell. Would you have preferred he started on an OHL team closer to the East Coast? Do you think playing for the Giants may have slowed his progress?
No, actually, because sometimes you need a CHL team to do an NHL team a favor. Like Loki Johansson with the Moncton Wildcats this year. In Vancouver, the Giants general manager, I forget how it works. His agent, Lysell's agent, is somehow involved with the Giants organization and the GM there. So it was easy to get him over to North America, and it was to get accustomed to the smaller ice surface. We've seen the Bruins work with college teams, CHL teams to get players into a position. It doesn't matter where it is. A great example is Alexander Koklachev when he went to the KHL and the Bruins wanted to bring him back. And they contacted the Windsor Spitfires and said, can you make... I remember I was on my way to London when this was all coming down, and the Spitfires were playing the Knights on that night, and I was getting phone calls and texts. See, Kevin, sometimes you do have to keep your phone on. On my way to the arena, asked me if I had heard the rumor, and Warren Reichel, who was the GM of the Windsor Spitfires at the time, when I walked in, I saw him standing there. I went straight up and asked him any truth to the rumors. He says, well, the Bruins have asked us. We need to make an overage spot, so we've got to make a trade before we can officially bring him over. So it happens, and I have no doubt that the Bruins specifically asked for Lysell to be in Vancouver, not to mention Bruins assistant GM, now advisor to Donnie Sweeney, what's his name, was in charge of the draft for a while. It'll come to me, lived in Vancouver, so he could keep an eye on him from game to game to game.
I
can't remember his name.
That's okay. Knowing you'll think of it in 5 minutes. So I'll talk for a minute. Don't be afraid to cut me off. You say like slowed his start. I don't really think that his start and his progress has been hampered all that much. I think a lot more of what's hampered Lysell's ability to make the jump to the NHL has
Scott
been
Bradley. That's it. Thanks, David.
Yep, David's got it. I think Lysell's more gotten in his own way between his attitude on the ice, which we've had conversations about. It was a thing, and then Mouginel called him out last year, and it got better. And he stopped trying to play hero puck. And he was supposed to get called up last year. He got hurt. He was going to see games. Don Sweeney has said it. I believe Mouginel has said that he was going to see a call-up. The path that the Bruins were on indicated that someone should get a call-up for a couple of games. It would have been Fabian Lysell. He started to get out of his own way. The question is coming into this year, has he learned, or was that just a response?
I would say he's learned. I would definitely say he's learned.
I hope so. Kevin says, I don't know if Lysell has that drive to be his best at this level. I hope to be proven wrong. I think, and this is just based off of what I've heard, what people have said about him, I think for him, he kind of feels like maybe the AHL is a little beneath where he should be. He feels like he should be in the NHL. I think being given a chance to be in the NHL you'll see a little bit more of that compete level, knowing that he has to maintain it in order to stay there. I think
I will take that in a different direction though, Chris. Not that you're wrong. I agree totally with what you're saying. But we can look no further than Mason Lohrei as an example. Sometimes you need a cup of coffee, and this is what hurt Lysell not being able to go up last year because of his injury.
yeah.
But sometimes you need a cup of coffee or a taste of it to get that drive to where it should be. Look what it did to Mason Lohrei. Every time he was sent down and came back up, that drive went up tenfold. And I expect we're going to see the same thing with Fabian Lysell.
I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Fabian Lysell make the team out of camp, and then maybe a week or two into the season, or maybe a month in, if you start to see a little dip in his play, he gets sent right down. I wouldn't be surprised by that. Just as a little, as they call it, chin music, just to kind of get his attention and say, listen, as much as you have this spot, it can get taken from you just as quick. You need to keep the play consistent. And how are you going to do that? By keeping the drive consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why Kevin is asking about Tim Hortons.
That cup of coffee.
Oh, the cup of coffee comment. Okay. That makes sense. I wasn't even thinking about it in that regard. But Kevin, we're in Boston. It's a Dunkin' cup of coffee. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lysell saw a little bit of action and then went down. And maybe after that month, when you make that switch, that might be when you see a guy like Matthew Poitras come back up if he doesn't make it right out of camp. Because those are two guys that don't have to worry about waivers. So you can call him up, kind of see where his game is at. I know we have talked about it a little bit about whether or not he's going to make the roster out of camp or not. Last year, obviously, AHL was not an option for Poitras. It is this year, so it does add to that conversation. And yeah, I get it, Kevin. I get that Tim Hortons is in Canada where Dom is.
But it's also in the States.
Lysell's also down here, though, so it would be a Dunkin' for Lysell.
Right.
So what do you think, Dom? Would you see that happening? Maybe a quick kind of send down for a guy like
Lysell? And it's we saw it with Lohrei. We saw it with Johnny Beecher. The Bruins will not be afraid to do it. They will not. It's just, like I said, Lysell's got it. Once he gets that cup of coffee, and if he gets sent down, that should be enough of a drive for him to pull a Mason Lohrei and be better the next time up. And I just noticed, why is my name under you?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't even notice that. I can go in and switch that.
I'm talking to myself.
Apparently.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised at all. Not at all.
Now, let's see. Mike adds a question. If Lysell plays a preseason game, who would it be best to see him with?
Oh, it all depends because, Marchand and Coyle are not playing every game.
Right.
He's not going to.
And Marchand probably missed the first couple, to be honest, if he's still recovering from 3 surgeries.
Ideally, that's where you want to see him on the last game, where you have pretty much your full roster out there. But Pasternak's not going to play every game, exhibition game. So, out there with Lindholm, I don't want him out there with Poitras because guaranteed Montgomery is not going to use them in game situations together. So what's the point?
Yeah, there's really no point. I agree with that. I guess, if you want to, if they end up out there for 30 seconds because of a line change, it's not the end of the world.
Right.
And if they, play off each other well in that 30 seconds and you want to give them, a full shift together just to see, it's preseason. I'm not going to lose my shit over it, but I don't think that's the game plan. I think you have to see something between the two of them that make you go, we've got to see more of that. Kind of like when we saw Coyle and Frederick together. They played well enough off each other that made you go, I want to keep these two guys together as much as we can. Geeky played well off of that.
I think practices are going to say a lot. It's like, who are they doing line rushes with? Who are they doing drills with? You want to start building that chemistry right away. It remains to be seen how quick Marchand's going to be ready, because ideally you want him out there with Brad Marchand.
Yeah, and before we get back to Marchand, I just want to point out Kevin's comment. He says Lohrei will be in the top 4 by the end of the season. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. Probably halfway through, honestly, with the way he's talking about coming in and having prepared. So it's funny, though, that you brought up Brad Marchand. We did have a question on Sunday night's show about the PTO being given to Tyler Johnson. How does he fit in the fold and all that sort of stuff? We've talked a little bit about it before, but with Tyler Johnson, he gives you an insurance policy across your top 9 forward group.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he's kind of behind the 8 ball. He's playing for a contract.
Yeah.
And depending on where the Swayman contract lands, you legitimately may not have room for Tyler Johnson. He's going to have to kick someone else off of this roster.
Well, if he comes in at league minimum, they'll have room for him because they'll have to send a body down anyway. So,
yeah.
I know that Tyler Johnson was the guy you had mentioned months ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, as a potential PTO option. I wouldn't say he's an insurance policy on the top 9, but probably more the middle 6.
Yeah.
In case a Lysell, a Patra, Merkulov are not ready, those are the guys he's got to beat out, and he's got to beat out all 3 to earn the spot.
Yeah, and Kevin says that Johnson will make the team, so we better start talking about where he will slot in. I want to know why Kevin's so confident he's going to make the team. I believe he can make the team. Let me be clear about that, especially to you, Kevin. There's so many, like you said, he's got to jump over Merkulov. He's got to jump over Patra and Lysell. Max Jones is in consideration. He could play third-line minutes. Justin Brazeau. These guys are already under contract. He's got to jump over every single one of them to get a league minimum contract. So as far as what he has to show that he is still the same Tyler Johnson who signed in Chicago, not the one who's leaving Chicago.
Right.
I got to see it. I can't sign him sight unseen, which is why I'm glad it's a PTO. If he still has that aspect of his game, though, he can still put, 15 goals, 40 points. I will love him on this team. And like you said, middle 6 fill-in, sure. Absolutely anywhere across it. And let's have that conversation, as Kevin is saying we should. There are a couple different spots where he could fit. And I do want to get into that. But Kevin does have David has a good question here. He says, listening to other teams' podcasts or other podcasts in general, they say the way to shut down the Bruins is to stop David Pastrnak. Do you agree with that? And if not, what's the way to shut down the Bruins? I'll let you start with that one.
Well, the thing is you can never shut down David Pastrnak. You can never shut down Connor McDavid. You can never shut down Nathan McKinnon. You can never shut down those players. What you have to hope is that you can limit what they can do. And this is where you need the Lindholms to step up, the Zakas to step up, Marchand to be what we think he can be. You need improvements from the Patras. You need Lysell to stick and produce. Um, to me, I don't think offense is going to be a big problem with this team. We lost Jake DeBrusk's, what was it, 19 goals?
Yeah, I think that was the number.
Do we not think that Elias Lindholm can score 19 goals?
I think so.
So there's the loss from DeBrusk. Now you should expect an improvement from Geeky. Should expect an improvement from Frederick. You should expect an improvement from Patra if he's on the opening night roster.
I would include that too. Now that he's on the wing, there's a little less pressure on him to have to play center.
I don't think offense is the problem, and especially since I expect now that they have a coach for the defense, a much more active defense. I think Nikita Zadorov is going to make a massive difference for Charlie McAvoy. That we'll see an improvement there. I really think Hampus Lindholm will go back to the type of season he had when John Gruden was behind the bench coaching him.
Yeah. I think they're going to go back and start using him more in less of a defensive shutdown only role. That was something that it sounds like he voiced to them as well, that he wanted to kind of get back to being more of a two-way guy.
Yeah.
Matrix jumps in and says the only way Pasta gets shut down is an injury. First off, let's not speak that into existence. But to your point, the offense has upgraded. Like, let's not forget that last year their problem was not scoring. Their problem was that they couldn't score at the right time when it came to the playoffs.
And the bad power play, I think.
The power play.
I think Lindholm will help that too. I think
Lori could be the one who's helping that come playoffs.
I was going to say, Lori, another year of experience. I just don't think offense is going to be the problem that many, many fans think it's going to be. The fourth line will be better.
Yep. And they have more options too. So like last year, Oscar Steen, as an example, he went 25, 32 games without a point. Like,
yeah,
it was bad. They're not going to they're going to have way more options this year than just letting him try to play through it. Obviously him not being here. Ian says in his opinion, DeBrusk isn't much of a loss. There is some loss.
Mike's got you missed over Mike's question, which I think is
with DeBrusk. I think where you lose him is that penalty kill, the two-way game, other aspects that you might have a small dip there, but I do think overall you'll have a better offensive performance. And as Joel points out, you will be better at the dot this year. So that's going to change.
I don't think you're going to miss DeBrusk on the PK because you've got Max Jones now who can PK, who's basically taking over from Jacob Lauko or Pat Maroon, who did not kill penalties. You've got Mark Kostelic, who will kill penalties, who could be there over Justin Brazeau, who does not kill penalties. You got a full season of Johnny Beecher instead of half a season, who kills penalties. Trent Frederick will be asked to take on a bigger role there. I don't think losing DeBrusk is going to hurt the PK as much as people think either. They've got the bodies that can do it. Fair. And they're better off on defense to handle the PK with Zadorov, Lindholm, McAvoy, and Carlo, or Peak and Carlo.
Absolutely. And real quick, we want to get to Mike's question, Mike, I promise I do see it there. I'm going to pull it up. Taz says Tyler Johnson can easily score 15 to 20 goals on the Bruins. The Bruins that we mentioned may have to jump over him. Appreciate the sentiments that it's a great show. Taz, the reason why I would disagree with that is because Johnson doesn't have a contract. He needs to play well enough in the preseason games to say, not only do I deserve the contract, but I deserve to play over all of these guys. So he's got multiple things to prove. Now, is his ceiling there? Yes, he's had 50-point season, a 45-point season, one in the middle there. He's had 20 and 30 goal seasons. However, his last year in Tampa, he put up 8 goals, 22 points, and then obviously injuries have started to get the better of him. 26 games played, 56 games played, 67 games played. Right now, your biggest question with Johnson is his durability. Is he going to be able to stay with the roster all season if you do sign him? I don't disagree, though. On this team, depending on where he's playing, he could be a 15 to 20 goal guy, which brings us to Mike's question. How many 20-goal scorers do we see on this roster?
Here's what I see. Zaka, Lindholm, Pasternak, Marchand, Coyle, Frederick, Geeky. How many is that? That's 7?
Let's see. The top 3 guys.
Marchand, Coyle.
Geeky, Frederick. So
Geeky, Frederick. That's 7.
That's 7.
Okay. And here's another one that I'm going to throw in there. Are you ready for this? If Charlie McAvoy plays 82 games almost exclusively with Nikita Zadorov, Charlie McAvoy is going to push 20 goals.
I was going to say, I think McAvoy could get there. He's got the offensive ability.
He could be 15 to 20 goals.
Absolutely. And again, as Taz said, if Johnson makes the team, he could be a 15 to 20 goal guy himself. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that I was running through, looking through the lineup the other day, obviously Fabian Lysell could push 20 goals. Tough to do as a rookie, probably closer to that 10 or 15, but I would totally take it if he's on the roster. We mentioned earlier the likelihood of Poitras and Lysell and Merkulov, any combination of the two being on the same line is very, very low.
Yeah, and we've talked about it ad nauseum sometimes in the past because we know Jim Montgomery is a lame duck coach.
Right.
And he needs victories. And when you have basically 2 rookies on the line, you're not coaching to win.
Right. Now, my question to you, obviously, we like a third line, ideally, of Frederick, Poitras, and Geeky.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the go-to line that we have both enjoyed the thought of the most. Now, with him being a rookie, what would you think of the idea of him being on a third line, Fabian Lysell? You move Trent Frederick to that top line, the second line right wing position. Assuming Johnson makes the team, you could then do a line with Geeky on the left, Johnson in the middle, and Lysell on the right.
I'd rather Johnson on the left, Geeky in the middle, and Lysell on the right.
Okay, I mean, fair enough. Either way, I get those two are interchangeable. Could you see Lysell being in a third line role in that type of capacity?
Yeah. I'm not ruling it out. I'm not ruling out any possibility other than the fact that we will not see Merkulov and Poitras together, or Lysell and Poitras together, or Merkulov and Lysell together. At least not at the NHL level.
And we might
see it in Providence. We won't see it in Boston.
And we will not see Georgi Merkulov make his right wing debut at the NHL level. That's just not going to happen. If it's something that they try in practice and they go, let's get a look at this, then they may say to him, hey, we want to see you on the right side a little bit more. We're going to send you to Providence. This isn't a knock on what you can do. It's a way to see how we can try and get you in the lineup more, and we need the help on the right. So let's get you
Hey,
some time.
but it might work in when they're doing line rushes and stuff that they say, hey, we need to see more of this and try it in an exhibition game. I'm not ruling it out. I'm just saying don't pencil them in for it
Right,
because
right. And so
we
many people,
don't know whether we can do it. And for
right,
months, everybody's been saying, uh, they've been penciling either him or Lysell on that 2 right wing. And nobody knows whether Merkulov can do it.
right. I mean, we don't even know if Lysell can do it right now. The only name, if you ask me right now, what are the top 6 as of right now? The name I'm penciling in there is Trent Frederick because I know he can do it.
Frederick or Geeky?
I would go Frederick. I like his scoring touch a little bit better. But again, I'm not complaining about Geeky being on that line either. David wants to know, we were talking about Charlie McAvoy hitting the potential 20-goal mark. Is he a Norris candidate this year?
He will be. No doubt in my mind. Nikita Zadorov is going to make a huge difference for Charlie McAvoy in how he can play his game.
How he can play his game, the way he plays his game. Like,
Yep.
everybody looks to McAvoy to lay the big hit. And it's not that he can't do it. He's just more apt to do it if he's not the first one relied upon to do it every single night.
Mm-hmm.
And, well,
it's not so much that. It's like worrying too much about playing defense.
yeah.
In the early years with Matt Grzelcyk would go on offense just as much as Charlie McAvoy, and that limited McAvoy's offensive ability because he had to play defense more. With Zadorov, he doesn't have to worry about that. Zadorov will go for a skate once in a while, and he'll be good at the blue line, keeping the puck in the zone, and will fire off a good shot. But Zadorov knows his game is to stop the opposition, and that'll give McAvoy more freelance time.
Absolutely. And I think part of why we saw some of we saw with McAvoy when he was with Grzelcyk is because they knew each other so well that, to your point, yeah, he had to play a little more defensively, but he could play his game better because he was so familiar with it. So he knew other times where he could jump up. Joel says that Frederick, Coyle, and Marchand have always been a good line. Thoughts on that line?
I've got nothing against it. It's just, how do I make 3 lines that work?
Yeah.
And it's Marchand. Look, I always deal in pairs, and most NHL coaches deal in pairs. Who are your pairs? And then find the third player that fits in. To me, Frederick and Geeky and Patra, in between them, they played well when they played together as well.
Oh, yeah.
At least with Frederick and Geeky being 2 bigger bodies, the opposition is not going to take a run at Matthew Patra like they started to do once they got to know him. Frederick ain't going to allow it.
No,
and Geeky may not drop the gloves, but he's not going to allow it either.
Yeah.
And chances are they're going to be on the ice with Zadorov and McAvoy for the most part. Who's going to want to take runs at Matthew Patra?
Not many people.
Right.
Maybe a Ryan Reeves.
So now, and I think we know what the first line is going to be. I mean, we've been talking about it for months now. It's just finding that right wing to go with Marchand and Coyle.
Yeah, and there is one other major assumption that we're all banking on history for. Absolutely, he's done it before, but what if something happens where Zacha comes out and is trash on the left wing? Like it's just not there for him. Well, now you have to reevaluate everything, but we've seen him do it before, so I don't think that's going to happen. But
Oh, Zach is better on the wing than he is down the middle.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
But you just never know. Ian has the defensive pairings that he would have: Zadorov with McAvoy, Lohrei with Carlo, and Lindholm with Peak. What do you think about the Lohrei, Carlo, Lindholm, Peak pairing? I think
Don't
we're
think
both
it's
in
good.
agreement Zadorov, McAvoy.
I think what you're going to see is Zadorov with McAvoy, Lindholm with Carlo taking on the heavy defensive responsibilities, and Lohrei with Peak. And you will once in a while see Lohrei and Zadorov switch off. That's
I
how I think it's going to happen.
I think you could see Lohrei switch off with both Zadorov and with Lindholm, depending on what the situation is.
Yeah, game situation is going to determine a lot.
But I mean, what's nice with these six guys, I mean, you have in McAvoy, Lindholm, and Carlo, three guys who can play 25 minutes. Lohrei, he can play 18 to 20 minutes. Zadorov can play a heavy load of minutes, and Peak can play a heavy load of minutes as well. He's better playing less minutes, absolutely, but Peak is going to be a penalty killer, 100%. Carlo, a penalty killer, 100%. Lindholm, Carlo will probably be your number one shutdown pair. They will see the Jake Gensels against Tampa Bay. They will see the Braden Points, Austin Matthews, those lines. That's going to be the pair you put out there.
I want to give you a stat on Nikita Zadorov because I went back through a lot of my OHL notes. So this is a regulation game, 60 minutes, no overtime, regular season game. Time on ice, 41-36 in a game. He played over 2 full periods.
Not surprised. And as Kevin says, so everyone can play heavy load of minutes. They can, yes.
I don't think Peak is a 20-minute. He's probably a 16 to 18, but everybody else is a 20-minute.
Yeah, and again, I would rather keep Peak at 15 to 16 minutes a night, but at the same time, like you said, situations in the game are going to depend on it. So am I going to be upset because Peak gets to an 18-minute night? No, because that also means that Carlo's not at 25 minutes. It means McAvoy's not at 25 minutes. Let's see. Kevin also says, I'm also not putting Lindholm on the bottom pair. He's at least second pairing for me.
Yeah, I'm not putting them on the bottom pair either.
And then Kendall says, Monty is always shaking up the lines. So even the top line, I think, will be shuffled around from game to game. I think we'll also see the defense shuffled around a bit as well. Now that they have a coach behind the bench for the defense, they can do a lot more. There's going to be a lot less communication. I think we will see a lot less too many men on the ice penalties this year.
Exactly.
I think that was something that, I mean, if you go back to the playoffs, that killed them. That alone crushed them in the playoffs. How many was it? Like seven? Like just that's 7 mistakes that you literally shot yourself in the foot with.
And when you're trying to juggle and match, you lose track of who you just told to get on the ice.
Right. And if Monty just has to worry about the 12 forwards and someone else is going to worry about the defense, I think now the question becomes, how will Jim Montgomery handle it? Now, obvious answer, they're all professionals. And at least for the first 10 games, no one is going to be looking over their shoulder because no one's going to get fired at game 6. No one's getting fired.
I think this is the way you're going to see the coaching handled. Is Leach will handle the defenseman, who goes out, who's matching against who, whatever. Kelly will handle the forwards, switching the forwards, and Sacco and Montgomery will coach.
Makes sense. And Asenza will be for the goalies.
Right.
So I actually, small transition to the goaltending for a minute here. Just because there's still a lot of questions, a lot of concern for Jonas Korpisalo. A lot of people still not thrilled, and I'm not saying trying to say how you have to feel about how he was part of the return. I know that you had a lot of intel during the trade that sent Linus to Ottawa, and you have a bit more insight than most of us as to why it was Korpisalo and how that part of the return came to be. Would you mind?
One of the goalies had to come back. The Bruins' choice.
And with
This was like the Leafs giving the Bruins a choice between Rask and what's his name.
who cares?
Not that these goalies are at that level, but the Bruins were given a choice. They chose Korpisalo. They said that's who they wanted, but the money doesn't work. And then Ottawa agreed to retain. I just want to say this real quick, and we'll get back to Korpisalo in a second, because Darren Dreger came out and said basically that the Bruins and Swayman are closer than what's being reported. And a lot of people are jumping on Dreger and calling him a fake insider and blah, 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 blah. Some not too kind things said about Dreger. I will say this, and I know this to be fact. Bob McKenzie brought Darren Dreger up under his wing. He taught him the ropes. He shared his contacts or his connections, and brought him along to be one of the best insiders out there. And to this day, I believe that Bob McKenzie still helps him out. Wasn't it Bob McKenzie that came out with the big signing of wasn't Jarvis?
No, I think that one was Saravalli.
Yeah, the one before that. Anyway, McKenzie came out of retirement just to make that tweet, and everybody was so happy because Bob was out of retirement for 5 minutes. So when Darren Dreger says something, you can almost take it as gospel.
I think, real quick, to piggyback off of that, and I do see your question, Mike. I'll pull that up in just a minute. To piggyback off of what you're saying, too, with Dreger's report that they're closer than the numbers thrown out there, if you've been listening to the two of us for the past 2 months, this doesn't surprise you. Because, Dom, you have said it countless times, and I have agreed with you countless times. The numbers being thrown out there are Fugazi numbers.
Mm-hmm. It's clickbait.
They're clickbait numbers. They're audio numbers, because you said it on one of our previous shows. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, that the sources that you have talked to have all said no comment. And then immediately, Elliot Friedman, in his first episode of the season of 32 Thoughts, also says everyone on both sides is silent about it. And yet, they want to take these numbers that someone's thrown out there, which, are they unreasonable numbers? No. They can very easily be justified by anybody. I can sit here and say, yep, I think Swayman is asking for 9.5. All right, now someone can take that and run with it, as they heard Swayman wants 9.5. I'm not out of the realm. I'm not sitting here saying he wants 15.5 million. No, if I said that, no one's going to listen to me.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to sit there and go, look at this crock of shit. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. If I say he wants 10 million, everyone's going to sit there and go, well, I see why, but he's ridiculous for asking about it.
I'm going to, Elliot Friedman has pumped my tires on Twitter and on 32 Thoughts, the written version and the podcast many of times. He's actually come out and said, if you're a Bruins fan, follow this guy. But I will tell you, as much as Elliot Friedman has pumped my tires, I'm still believing Darren Dreger over all of them. And I absolutely hate Darren Dreger for a lot of reasons. But the biggest one is years ago, I broke the Carl Soderberg coming over news and the whole IHF handling of the situation and everything. And when then Darren Dreger or people were like coming at me and saying, well, nobody else is reporting this, nobody. And then Darren Dreger did. And it's like, okay, like give credit where credit. I didn't come out and say anything to him. Others did. Said like Dom had this like 2 weeks ago. And he would never, ever. Bob McKenzie come out the day after Dreger said and credited me with having the news first.
Yeah, and
Dreger still refused to. So for me to give Darren Dreger a compliment and to tell you to believe him over everybody else hurts me to say it.
But that's, again, what you get from our show.
Yeah, I'm not here to lie to anybody. It is what it is. I've had the same person that told me Marco Sturm way back in 2011 was being traded to LA, that David Krejci, remember it was for future considerations. There was a bigger part of the deal coming up involving David Krejci, and then Mark Savard got hurt. So that got killed. It told me about Carl Soderberg, told me about Hampus Lindholm, Kevin told me about Hampus Lindholm, and then I went and checked. Told me about Braden Shen, how the Bruins were heavily after him. When I asked him honestly about Jeremy Swayman, I got an absolute no comment.
Which means they're
told to shut up.
We're telling everyone else the directive is not a goddamn word.
Right.
And we saw Florida fire an employee because they leaked a picture of their center ice logo. So don't you for one fucking second believe that if someone threw a legitimate number out there, they wouldn't figure out who the hell it was and fire that person.
David Pasternak's second contract, if we go back to that, I had it to the penny, broken down year by year, and people said I was nuts. He wasn't signing for that. And he signed to the penny exactly what I said he was going to sign, year by year on that deal. I get a no comment for Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah. So, again, if you've been paying attention to this show, listening to us, then the Dreger report, the comments, as Kendall says, he wanted to mention them as well. I agree. He knows his stuff. We all know Dreger knows his stuff. My point is if you've been listening to us, the comments are not a surprise because everybody's been saying they're a mile apart. Honestly, I don't think they've really done a lot of talking until lately. I really don't.
I don't know. To me, I'm still not worried.
As Kevin calls Soderberg the one-eyed Swede.
Mm-hmm. And remember what Marshy said when Bergeron was hurt and Soderberg was centering that line? He said, play like Bergie. They were going out for practice. He said, play like Bergie. And Soderberg said, I play like Carl.
Mike has a good question, though. And we were talking about Korpisalo. I don't know if you had another thought to go back on him. But this is a good question when it comes to Korpisalo. How did the Senators D play in their structure in the D zone? How does that differ from how the Bruins play defense?
Um, the Bruins are kind of a hybrid. They're zone defense, but will at times, depending on the situation, go man to man. Zone defense is a lot easier for a goaltender, uh, especially a goaltender going to a new team who he doesn't know the defenseman, because you have a better idea of what your defensemen are going to do and where they're going to be in a certain situation. Excuse me. In Ottawa, they played a man-on-man defense, which can sometimes get your defenseman running all the way out to the blue line. Um, so it gets rather confusing for the goaltender, not knowing where your defenseman's going to be and where he should be. So that's the biggest difference.
Yeah. And then also one other difference that I want to point out too. We talk about, like, we hear it all the time. Bergeron in his two-way game, Marchand in his two-way game. Well, just down the middle alone, last year you had Charlie Coyle playing one of his best defensive seasons that he's ever had as a center. Pavel Wacha had increased his defensive game drastically. And then on the third line, you had a mix between Poitras, Frederick, Geeky, Boquist on the fourth line, Beecher. But that unit down the middle defensively, I mean, even if you look at the other forwards in the forward group, Brad Marchand, right? On the right side, you're talking, Dan Heinen for a while. As I mentioned, Geeky, Frederick, those guys, Jake DeBrusk, right? You compare that forward group to what was in Ottawa, like, don't get me wrong, it's a talented group offensively. Their best defensive forward is probably Claude Giroux. They also had Tim Stützle, Jake Batherson. Brady Tkachuk's not terrible defensively, but he's still young, and it's still something he's got to work on in his game to play it properly. Josh Norris, Shane Pinto, like, I'm sorry, but the forward group that comes back to help the defense, the Bruins group is miles ahead defensively from that Ottawa group.
Just winning faceoffs and gaining possession in your own zone is a big difference.
Kevin also says, if anyone messes with my boy Dom, then they make my shit list, so watch out, Drager.
Thanks, Kevin.
I mean, I think we all have your back here, Dom. But again, to your point, Drager does know his stuff. So definitely worth at least paying attention when he says something. But I do think you're to the penny line with David Pastrnak has made others wonder where you think that number will come in at for Jeremy Swayman.
Don't know. Not even going to guess.
It's going to vary too. I mean, they could do a 2-year deal, they could do an 8-year deal. It's
I think what I can tell you, it will be less than 9.3 million. And how do I know that? How do I know that? Because that's the amount of room the Bruins left themselves.
That's the most they can free up without a deal of trading someone away or something like that, right?
Right.
I don't think they need that much, though. I think it'll come in under that. I think that's why you are only seeing one PTO, because they don't expect to have a lot more than that, but we'll see. Of all the numbers being thrown out there, it's going to be different. It's not going to be any of those. If it was, as we've said before, if it was as simple as 8 years by $8 million, it would already be done. Kevin said, or David says, do you recall the 85 shot game for the Blue Jackets that Korpisalo had facing against the Lightning? I remember that one. There was the triple overtime game, the double overtime game. Those were all Korpisalo. Korpisalo is the type of goaltender that if he can see the puck and he knows where it's coming from, he's going to be fine.
And hopefully a new mask and having
I
his eyesight fixed is going to help.
Yeah, Kevin says Boston's going to save $1 million for Johnson. I honestly don't even know if they would need that much, Kevin, but I get where you're going with it. Unfortunately, Jeff's question, he wants to know if we're going to go to the Prospects Challenge at all.
Well, Jeff, I was going to before we got on air. I was messaging Chris. I don't know if you can put it up or not, Chris, in our private chat there, where my private jet is getting new seats put in, and it should be done today, but I haven't heard yet. So I was going to go, and then I thought, you know what, the team is going to be made up mostly of invites. So what's the sense of going? So I decided not to.
Yeah.
I could drive if my jet's not ready. It's only a 2-hour drive if the border crossing is easy.
Yeah, for me, it's about a 7-hour drive over to Buffalo. But, I mean, I'd love to go this year. It just doesn't seem to be in the cards with my schedule, with a lot of stuff I have going on. And to Dom's point, because it's going to be a lot of invites, I feel like next year may be a better opportunity to go and see more of what the Bruins' actual prospects are going to look like. Timing-wise, it might make a little difference next year as well. I mean, there are a lot of guys that I want to see that can't go because they're in the college rankings. We talked a lot about them on Sunday. Letourneau, Yelvik, those kinds of guys. I really want to see a guy like Nierenberg play as well, but he's going to be over in Sweden, and I don't know if he'll make the tournament. So a lot of the prospects that I want to go to see and kind of see how they all continue their development, still a couple years away. Plenty of time for me to go and see them at the challenge. I'm not going to, kill myself to go when there's going to be so many invites. So hopefully, though, the opposition, whoever we play against, has their own stream of the game. Boston won't have theirs, but if I can view the Devils stream, I'll try and do that.
Yeah, the Devils definitely will. Who else are they playing? They're not playing Buffalo, but Buffalo's games will be streamed. I forget the Bruins schedule. They're playing Pittsburgh?
I have to pull it up, actually. I saw that it was sent out, and I just kind of was like, well, I'm not going, so I'm not paying that much attention to it. Right now.
If it is Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh streams theirs on YouTube channel. I believe New Jersey's is on the new YouTube channel as well.
Hold on. They will be playing Pittsburgh Ottawa. Friday the 13th, Columbus on Saturday the 14th, and then New Jersey Monday the 16th. Games are at noon, 3:30, and 10 a.m. respectively.
Yes. The only one I'm not sure about is Columbus, how they stream theirs, but I'm sure that they probably do.
Jeff, you must have tuned in late because he's asking about a sense of the roster. Harrison, Edwards, some of those guys should be there. A lot of the guys in Providence we mentioned should be there.
Do you want me to go through?
I'll let you go through the list again.
Yeah. I don't suspect Bussy or DiPietro to be there. They pretty much aged out and will be battling for the backup spot in Boston. So the goaltenders will be Ryan Bischel and Nolan Meyer, who are under AHL contracts. There might be an invite as well. On defense, I'm expecting Frederic Brunet, Jackson Edward, Ryan Mast, Drew Bavaro to be there. I doubt Mike Callahan will be there, probably aged out. Same with Alec Regula. Mason Millman, who they just signed to an AHL deal, will be there. Up front, I'm expecting Patra to be there because they'll want to get him fast-tracked to game action. Brett Harrison, Trevor Kuntar, John Farinacci, Riley Duran, Jackson Nelson, Evan Bierling, who they just signed to an AHL deal, Adam Matura, who's on an AHL deal, and then I'm expecting a bunch of invites to fill out the roster.
I wouldn't be surprised. Farinacci can play the right side, correct?
Yeah, I can play center or right wing.
So I wouldn't really be surprised if you saw Harrison, Poitras, and Farinacci on a line together.
No, wouldn't surprise me at all. But we'll see.
Although,
That's what I'm expecting to be there.
to your point, though, building off of pairs, I like the pair of Harrison and Poitras. I want to see that pair together a little bit.
Yeah, shooter and playmaker. So, yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's a rookie camp. It is what it is.
Yeah.
But if the general idea is that, you want both of these guys on your NHL roster, they could complement each other quite well. Kevin, you don't want the Poitras Harrison combination? Jeff says, thanks, guys. Always. We try to catch people up who miss stuff, but again, every episode goes out as a podcast, usually the next morning. And then you can rewatch it back on YouTube. Follow us. I see that you're on the YouTube page there. So click the like or subscribe button there, and you'll know every time we go live. We're now doing the show every Sunday, the Dom.Hockey podcast. That one is exclusive to just the prospects. This past Sunday, we went through all the non-professionals, and then Dom, you have the list of the next 2 weeks in there. Do you want to just recap what those 2 weeks are going to look like?
Yeah. So this Sunday, I'm going to do my infamous predictions for the non-pros. So that's non-Providence or AHL prospects. And then the following week, we will look at the players in Providence, because by then we should have a good idea of who's going to be there.
Yeah, we want to give it a little bit of time to see who might end up in there. And David has a good question about that. He wants to know, do you have Beecher in the lineup? I'm guessing for the Bruins themselves. I have him in the starting lineup in the bottom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But not for the prospects challenge, if that's what he's meaning.
I think he's targeting for the big club when the season opens.
Yeah.
David, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'm going with what you meant. And I totally see Beecher. The one that I keep coming back to, and the parallel that I keep using, we all remember a couple years ago, Mark McLaughlin had his cup of coffee with the big club, and everybody fell in love with McMuffin, and everybody came in the following year with him to camp, wanting to see him make the bottom six, right wing, center, so on. And then he didn't skate a game with the big club the following year, and everyone couldn't figure out why. This year, I think it's going to be Brazeau. And it's funny because as soon as I said that, Matrix jumps in and says that Brazeau is his 13th forward.
Mine too.
I've
posted my lineup here many a times. I will give it to you real quick. Line 1, Zach Lindholm Pasternak. Line 2, Marchand Coyle Lysell. Line 3, Frederick Poitras. Line 4, Jones Beecher Kastelic. Brazeau's your 13th forward. On defense, Zadorov McAvoy, Lindholm Carlo, Loroi Peak. Waterspoon is your 7th defenseman. And then in net will be Swayman and Korpisalo.
Although I do like your idea that they may carry all three going into the season. Korpisalo, and Swayman.
Until Vancouver gets their goaltending situation settled.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if the Bruins don't.
Yeah, because Vancouver is now a wild card that they didn't have before. Dieter Demko is dealing with an injury that, as Elliot Friedman described it, he has to learn to play through and kind of learn to live with and deal with. The injury to Artur Shilovs seems to be more of an inflammation that they're trying to prevent from getting worse. And so he was withheld from the Olympic qualifier for Latvia. But they've got to know that one of those guys is healthy enough before they don't look at further goaltending. So I really do think that they see the Bruins carry three so they don't lose someone to Vancouver.
And I will say this, and everything is time-stamped. You guys can go back and look at it. I actually wrote about the Bruins carrying 3 goaltenders, possibly 6 weeks ago. And
Yeah.
then Chris and I have discussed it on this show 6 weeks ago. And
Yep.
now every other podcast is telling you, hey, the Bruins might start carry 3 goaltenders to start.
I started hearing it on other places that I listened to 2 to 3 weeks later. It started to percolate. Everyone seems to be about 2 weeks behind you, Dom.
Mm-hmm.
So
everything is time stamped. So
I like that idea. I think they're going to go with it. Kevin said you're going to have to change your lineup because Johnson will get a contract and will play regularly. He's the new, more versatile Danton Heinen.
Kevin was here at the beginning, right? Because you put him up saying Kevin's already in the okay. So Kevin, go back to what I said at the beginning when I said 6% of people said our podcast sucked. Okay. I do not begrudge anybody of their opinion. They're entitled to it. I respect it, and I will give them the floor to speak their opinion. So here's your floor. Please don't disrespect mine, okay? Because I don't disrespect yours.
Bruins Meat says you can't carry Bussy. He would get snatched up if they put him through waivers. Bruin, that's exactly why they would carry him. Because once the season starts, depending on when you try to waive him, if Vancouver tries to claim him off of waivers, they would have to carry him for the duration of the NHL season, which means if Demko's going to play, Shilovs is going to play, they're not looking for a guy that's going to have to clear waivers. They could lose or will lose right away. They are going to look for someone who can come up and go down in the farm system. Someone like Martin Jones did for Toronto. That's what they're going to look for. And they're going to need someone who can play NHL games as well, not someone who's never played an NHL game. That could be the thing that allows you to squeak Bussy through. If he has an average showing in preseason games, I think you could squeeze him through because no one's going to want to take that chance on a guy who has no NHL games to his name and has a questionable preseason. Mike wants to know if the top 5 hockey IQ in the Bruins forward group. Mike, if you could just reword that. Let's see. I'm not sure what he means by like which 5 players have the best IQ in the forwards group, or are they a top 5 in IQ of hockey in the league as a group? Mike, I just want you to clarify for me real quick on that. It sounds like a great question.
I think he's looking for the top 5 IQ forwards on the Bruins. And I will say Lindholm, Pasternak, Marchand, Coyle, Patra.
I can't say I disagree with the list. I really don't think I can. Patra, I think his brain is definitely there. I think more or less the body holds him back. So putting him in that top 5, I don't disagree with it at all.
But the question as asked, the top 5 Bruins forwards in IQ, and he's up there. I know him better than anybody in this chat. And I've watched him for a lot longer, and I'm telling you, he's a very intelligent hockey player.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like he's the only one that I would even think about maybe not being in there. But even then, I mean, compared to Zacha, compared to anybody in the bottom 6, like he's the guy. So he probably has more safety based off that. So Jeff says that you have a sick hat. He used to have the same one, but it yellowed too far. Let's see. Bruins Meat asks, do you think if Bussy outplays Korpisalo, they send Korpisalo down? I don't think they're afraid to.
Yeah. I think they would.
I mean, it could also be if they decide they need to carry an extra forward or an extra defenseman or something and they need to go 2 goaltenders, you may see Korpisalo go down just because they can get him through because of his contract.
Swayman is signed and they want to get Korpisalo games and get his game built up with Mike Dunham there, they will not be afraid to send him down. They will not.
That's the other thing
But
too.
Bussy has to prove, or DiPietro, let's not forget him. They have to prove that they can handle the playing one game a week at the NHL level.
Now, late last year, we were hearing reports that DiPietro may have passed Bussy on the depth chart. And any thought to that, or is it a clean slate for the two of them coming in?
Clean slate.
That's how I would handle it. Let's see. Matrix says, if Korpisalo does get sent, what do the Bruins have cap-wise?
They'll save $1,075,000.
I was going to say, it was something like that they'll save off of his cap hit. And then it can't really give a full number on that, Matrix, just because, again, if...
And they're not really saving because Bussy's going to take up $775,000 of that.
Right, so that ends up saving them maybe $1 million.
No, it ends up saving them about $300,000.
Oh yeah, sorry, did the math wrong in my head. This is why I do this. I'm not a math guy that much. I need to write it all down and do it slow. But yeah, they'll save a little bit of money, and then obviously if a guy like Kostelic doesn't make the big club for whatever reason, they'll have a little bit more money, and it all comes down to what that final roster looks like. Oh, thumbs up. Okay, it didn't show up on here, so I wanted to see what the comment was. Let's see. Any other comments that I missed? The only one I really wanted to go back on was Kevin's comment talking about Johnson making the roster. I go back and forth. I love his versatility. I've got to see how he looks in camp. And the other one I've got to look at is Justin Brazeau, because it may come down to a point where 13th forward, do you send Brazeau down and sign Johnson, or do you just keep Brazeau on as your 13th forward? And you and I have talked about it a number of times. Last year, I mean, Brazeau is what, 6'5", 220, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
He lost puck battles in the playoffs to guys that he should not have been losing puck battles to along the board.
Lost some, yeah.
So depending on how he looks in camp, if he looks like he's going to win those board battles on a consistent basis, then yes, I want to keep him around. I want to see him as a 13th forward. I want to see what he can bring to the bottom six as a unit, as a guy you can rotate in. However, if he's still going to lose those board battles, I want to see him in Providence. I want to see him working with the coaches every day. I want to see him continue to work on his skating. That's not to say he can't come back later in the season, but if a guy like Johnson can do all the things you need him to do and provide the versatility, even if you have, Liesel in the lineup, even if it's the top six that you mentioned, or rather the top nine that you mentioned, Tyler Johnson could be a solid 13th forward.
Yeah, but you're not going to sign him to be a 13th forward.
I don't think so. I think you would sign him to be a third line player on a consistent basis.
You're basically doing the player and the agent a favor by bringing them in on the PTO, because not only are you giving them an opportunity to sign with your team, but you're giving them an opportunity to sign with another team. You're basically giving him a place to showcase himself. That's basically what a PTO is, because most PTOs do not end up signing contracts.
And you're able to better speak to the relationship there, but his agent is JP Barry, someone the Bruins are familiar with. So the question is, who owes who the favor?
He's doing them a favor by giving them a place to go. But Johnson does not want to be a 13th forward.
I don't think so. I think the whole reason why that's why I can't wait to see what he brings.
Yeah,
Because
and
I
the
want him in
Bruins, honestly, the Bruins are not going to waste a contract spot by signing him to be a 13th forward. They're not.
I don't think they would, not for a 13th role, a 13th forward role. If he was able to be a solid third line player, though, I think they could look at him. I don't hate that idea, like you said, of having Geeky and Johnson, and then on the right side having Liesel. I don't know if they're going to look at Fabian Liesel as being ready to take over the defensive part of playing with Marchand and Coyle. However, with Marchand and Coyle, they're not going to require him to have that as much.
No, but listen. I've said it 100 times. The Bruins want Liesel or Lysel, whatever way you want to pronounce it, or Merkulov to make the roster.
Yes, I think
Preferably, they want Merkulov because he's 25 or 24 years old, or will be 24, whatever. He's the oldest. He'll be an RFA at the end of the season, and if he's got something, they want him to make it. On the other hand, they want Lysel to make it because he's a former first-round pick, has all this potential, and they want to see him reach it. They absolutely want the two of them to make it, even at the expense of Matthew Poitras. Okay? They don't care about Tyler Johnson. He's there as an insurance policy in case Lysel, Merkulov, and Poitras don't make it. They're not counting on him to make the team. They don't want him to make the team. They want their players, the Merkulovs, the Lysels, the Poitras, to make the team. So they did him a favor, bring him in. He's on an insurance policy. Hey, have yourself a good camp. Maybe the Leafs will sign you, or maybe Vegas will sign you, or maybe LA will sign you. That's what a PTO is.
Yeah, and I that's why I want to see what he looks like in camp, because I still think
we don't want to see what he looks like in camp. We want to see what Poitras, Merkulov, and Lysel look like in camp. And if they fail, then we worry about Johnson.
Good way to put it. Better way to put it.
Yeah, we don't care what Johnson looks like. What we care about is what the three kids look like.
Let's see. Got a couple other comments here. Matrix says on Brazeau is not a fast skater. Jones and Kostelic and Beecher are super fast players. Brazeau just doesn't seem to fit that bottom six. He does
we've heard Sweeney say it 100 times. Arrive on time.
Yeah. Let's see. Bruins Mead says, what if you had Zacha, Coyle, and Marchand on a line that would open up the left for Merkulov on Pasta Lindholm line? I just who are you putting? Are you putting Zacha at center on that one? Because I don't like. I mean, Coyle has played right wing, but it's just not the same. It really is a detriment to his game at that point. He's much stronger as a center, and you know it not impossible. You might see it in some variation of that in a preseason game, especially if you were to see Merkulov on the left side with Pasta and they looked good in a preseason game. But that's not, I wouldn't look to start that way.
No, it's not ideal.
That could be something you do midway through the season when you're in the dog days of the season and you're trying to shake things up and stir the pot a bit. David asked the question, Riley Tuft or Brazeau?
Brazeau. Tuft will be battling Max Jones. Because I believe Tuft is a left winger and Brazeau is a right winger.
Yeah. And then Craig asks, how would you line up the power play?
Lindholm is the bumper. Pasta in his spot. Marchand in the what I call the DeBrus spot, off the post below the at the goal line. Patra at the Marchand spot, because I know that he's played it successfully and will find Pasternak even through bodies. And I'm starting with McAvoy on the point. If he doesn't work, I'm putting Zadorov there for the shot.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I love the idea, like you said a couple times, Matthew Patra on that half wall kind of side looking to make the pass. Again, that comes back to the intelligence factor. You know, it's a crucial spot on the power play, and he's done it successfully before. So I'm anxious to see how Montgomery lines him up. It's there's so many options though. There really is, and I think at some point you'll see Mason Lohrei grab some PP one time, run that from the back as well. They'll be changing it up. I don't think it will be nearly as bad as last year though. I'll come out with that. Bruin's Meat says that Zaka would be the center, so then you'd be looking at Marchand, Zaka, Coyle. What do you think of that line overall?
No, don't like it. I don't like Zaka in the middle because he's better on the left wing, and I don't like Coyle on the wing because he's better in the middle. Yeah. Like you've just weakened two spots,
and you're not flipping Marchand to the right side.
No, you've just weakened two spots by making that change.
Yeah, David says hopefully Liesel can stand up. How much weight has he added onto his frame?
Don't know. We'll find out when they show up for medicals.
I was gonna say when they show up for camp, we'll get the official measurement and we'll be able to see how much he's put on. So, let's see. Brandon asks, any dark
horse? Skipped one.
The thoughts on Riley Tuft?
Yeah.
I know we'd already talked about him, so I wasn't sure if you had much more to add to him.
I actually like the idea of bringing him in. Look, he's drafted by Dallas, tough roster to crack. Went on to Colorado, was a tough roster to crack. He's put up points in the AHL level, especially last season with what's Colorado's farm team? I forget. Whatever their farm.
And I can't think of
so he's shown potential at the AHL level. He's battling Max Jones, and Max Jones is here on a 2-year deal, one-way contract. Tuft, I believe, is a 2-way contract. So he's going to be in tough. Picked one spot later than Jones in the 2016 draft. Big kid, can skate, can put up points. We'll see what happens. It's all about competition in camp.
Yeah, you mentioned it. He's 26, 6'6", about 230, 231. He was the 25th overall pick. So, you don't pick someone in the first round if you don't see something there. You mentioned he's had some tough times cracking the lineup, only 10 NHL games played. I don't hate the signing, though. Like I said, it's a competition on the left side. We'll push Jones, push Frederick. If he ends up in Providence, then if he plays really well, maybe you give him a taste coming up at the end of the season.
Or we could see Frederick take that 2 right wing spot, Jones take the third line left wing to protect Patra, and Tuft make the fourth line with Beecher and Kostelic.
Yep, absolutely.
There's opportunities there for him He just has to take it. And that's what competition is all about.
Absolutely, 100%, and that's why I don't hate the deal. You need bodies in Providence at some point anyway,
Yep.
whether they're fringe guys or not. I'd rather the fringe guys fighting to get back into the National Hockey League, especially like it's 3 months in, Max Jones gets hurt. Riley Tuft is a guy that you will then be able to call up and have him
Yep.
fill. You know, Brandon says any dark horses in the system that could surprise in camp.
No.
I think we pretty much know our competitions. It's just a matter of how do the guys look. Jones, Kostelik, Merkulov, Frederick to a degree because he can fight for that second line right wing spot.
Yep.
Liesel, Patra. How do they all look in amongst themselves? And then who ends up getting sent down? It's not a matter
there's
of
no surprise. There's no surprises coming to answer the question. If you had asked me before free agency, I would have said Trevor Kuntar. In fact, I did say Trevor Kuntar. He was my dark horse. But they signed these guys for a reason. So there's no surprises coming.
Yeah. Joel asks about Riley Duran.
No.
He's just got too many people to jump over. Is it possible? I mean, I guess anything's possible, but I'd rather see Duran at the lower levels continue to improve his game, even if, for some stupid reason, you saw him play well enough in a game that you want to make him jump over all these other guys to put him on the roster. That's not the best decision for him long term anyway.
No, and much like I said on Sunday's prospect show, you got to stop dealing with one tournament, one prospects challenge, one rookie camp, one development camp, and look at the big body picture. We had this discussion because I was talking about guys like Oli Levy and Jesse Puljujarvi who had great World Junior Championships and then have obviously bombed out at the NHL level. Okay. Riley Duran is getting a lot of love because of development camp. And he's getting that because it was probably the first opportunity for many of the people that are commenting to actually see him play a game, even though it's a scrimmage. Okay. But he doesn't even have a full year of AHL hockey under him. Let me repeat that. He doesn't even have a full year of AHL hockey under him. Okay, so you can come to this show and get an honest answer and on how we feel, or you can go to a show who has watched him at one development camp and said he's going to make the roster.
Right. Now, and like I said, I was there, Joel. He had a very good showing at development camp. He did. However, as David mentions, it's about the full body of work. And that one development camp, as good as it was, is not enough, in my opinion, to make him a dark horse to make the roster this year. And quite frankly, if you look at the pieces that they've brought in, if you look at what other moves the Bruins have made, it's clear and obvious that they feel the same way. That doesn't mean I'm sitting here downplaying Duran's good camp. I'm not sitting here saying he sucks, and I know some people may want to run with it that way. He's just not ready yet. It's not his turn.
He will be an NHL player, just not yet.
And there's nothing wrong. He's what, 22 years old right now?
Yeah, 21, 22.
21, 22, something along that lines. Like, there's nothing wrong with him playing in Providence right now. Let him get the AHL time. He's going to need it. It's going to provide value for him. And honestly, like, if he goes down to Providence and plays like a bat out of hell, he may end up forcing their hand to say, we have someone struggling. Let's call him up. Let's see what he looks like. But you've got to let him do that. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. You try to make Riley Duran make this roster, you are going to trip over yourself just to try to get a name off of your farm system list. So I see that it's been pulled up. Jeff has a good question. What will be the Bruins record after the first 10 games of the season?
A lot of unknowns. Is Swayman signed? Is he playing in those first 10 games? I don't even know who they're playing. So I know Matrix says 7-2-1. So I'm going to go with that because I don't even know who they're playing.
Yeah, right now it's a little bit too much to see. Let's get a roster. Let's cap compliant first, and then we can look at those first 10 games. Like you said, so many what ifs, so much to go over. But we'll be here for
Jeff,
all of it.
when we know what the roster is, and I get a chance to actually look at the schedule, we will answer it. But I just can't answer it right now.
Yeah, it's. Let's see. David says 10 wins, 0 losses, 0 in OT. So 82-0 is on.
Awesome.
So, Dom, any final thoughts? It's getting to be a little bit after the 8 o'clock hour here on the East. And that's getting a little late for us for the off-season modes anyway. Any final thoughts to wrap up this edition before we next see folks on the Dom.Hockey pod on Sunday?
Yeah, so not hockey related. I know most people are watching this live tonight, but a lot of people will turn in tomorrow. And as everybody knows or should know, that tomorrow is September 11th. I, as a Canadian, remember exactly where I was on that day, what I was doing when I first heard the news, and how I rushed home. I had to drive from Ingersoll to Stratford, which is about half-hour drive, 40-minute drive. Even though I'm Canadian, I was devastated. It may not have hit us as hard as it hit the Americans, but we felt it along with you. And I just want to take this opportunity to say that I remember, I will always pray for the families of the survivors of those that were lost, the family members, and for those that lost their lives. And I earned a great deal of respect for first responders. And, even my fellow Canadians who opened their doors for stranded travelers when they were forced to land in Canada. It's just sad, and I hate to end a good show with that, but I always want to make sure that those people and that day is never forgotten.
Yeah, and I will pull up the last comment of the night here real quick. Matrix says, kick-ass show as always. Appreciate the kind words. Love hanging out with you as well in the comments. And then he ends it with September 11th, never forget. And that's the crucial thing. Obviously, in the recent weeks, the hockey world has been struck with its own tragedy. And, it's actually inspired me to take my other show, Puck Off, in a different direction, because we do see, the outpour of support during these times of tragedy, especially like we saw, a week and a half ago with the loss of the Gaudreau brothers. 9/11 is another example of it. People always find a way to come together in these moments. And I wanted to try and utilize that platform of that show to try and make it so we don't have to have tragedy for that to happen. Obviously, the hockey world has had other significant tragedies as well. The Humboldt Broncos bus crash, the KHL plane crash.
Locomotive, yeah.
Yeah, the list unfortunately goes longer and longer and longer. And so definitely I want to use the platform of that show with a little bit more hockey reach, to try to help not have to wait for tragedy for that. I actually had a great interview on that show with someone who was covering the night that the Gaudreau accident happened. And so, like you said, September 11th, we always say never forget, but what does it truly mean? And like you said, you'll never forget where you were. I was a much younger kid. I vaguely remember the day. I remember getting home from school, seeing it on the news, and then, you know, like the way I am on Twitter sometimes now when a news breaks, like just trying to consume as much as I can, and find the new information. But as you said, we can't let it go unstated, unforgotten, and not mentioned. So I'm glad that you brought it up as well. So with that, like you said, we will end on a little bit more of a somber note, but I do want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. We went a little long, but that's never necessarily a bad thing. And like I said, Sunday, 6:30, same time, same place on Sunday. And hopefully by then we have a little bit more information on some of the other stuff that we have in the works for you guys. So thank you so much for jumping in on this episode of What's Brewing. And hope you guys all have a great night. And, hug your loved ones tomorrow in memory of those who were lost on September 11th, 2001.